Look, we all know how much witch stuff ties into queer stuff, and if you don't know that, then I don't know how to catch you up on what feels like centuries of historical context to that statement, so look, just go with it. And therefore, it should be no surprise to any of us to discover that the first live-action television adaptation of the Archie spin-off comic series, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, a story about...
You don't get your actual witch's license until you're 18, and can pay for the insurance.
Well, about a girl called Sabrina who learns that she is a witch while she is a teenager in it. Look, it's a pretty simple premise that they kinda lay out for you in the title, but it should not come as a shock to any of you to discover that yes, this is indeed another show for kids that happened to have a gender swap episode in it. I know! Who could have guessed that the plague of writers feeling like the best way to generate content for an episode is to go to that classic well of asking, what situation would be required for the main character to need to, I don't know, just for some reason, change their gender, and that would fix all the problems? Seriously. This happened a hell of a lot, enough that I could pretty much make a third playlist of videos on this channel just dedicated towards gender swap episodes. From the magical gender swaps, to the curse-based gender swaps, to the science fiction gender swaps, to the gender swaps for an article, to the gender swaps to avoid getting spotted by people.
I'm prettier than you. You are not!
Oh, trust me, those television writers, often for kid shows as I said, consistently went to this as a storyline. It's no wonder people look back at all of that and use it as a historical touchstone for their trans journey. The moment they started questioning or asking things about themselves and who they were. It existed in places where trans people would not have been able to happen, and so it plays a big part there. Okay, let's talk more about that when we get to the conclusion, and instead let's just jump straight into the episode itself. Season 2's episode 6, Sabrina the Teenage Boy.
Well, it's nice to see you again. I hear some dudes are customizing some wheels. Don't want to be late.
God, they really did just love spelling out everything on the front cover of the show, not even an attempt there to really make a punny title around some kind of trans or gender thing. Just Sabrina the Teenage Boy. That's what's happening. Now, Sabrina starts us off bright and early, with establishing the premise of why Sabrina might be interested in getting a little magical trans mask shit going, as her and her bestie find themselves stood up by the guys again. The guys having all decided instead to hang out in the garage, listen to rock music, look at cars, and talk about what the grossest thing is in a movie, whether it's guts or pus.
Oh, no way, dude. What's gonna make you yak in a movie? A few measly guts?
I guess there are jokes in this scene, but it does really feel like the writers kinda took the girls are from Venus and boys are from Mars approach to crafting comedy. The assumption that it's inherently funny to see men doing different things to what women do and acting all silly.
What do you think guys talk about when we're not around? Girls?
Guts.
Maybe I just don't have a mentality that clicks with this, or maybe it's just some very low tier quality creative effort, but regardless, it gets us as the audience to seeing that the world we live in, especially 20 years ago, was divided heavily on a societal and cultural level into male and female spaces and identities, and that both sides almost live in these bubbles of information where they have no idea what is going on with the other gender.
20 minutes waiting for Harvey, but then he decided to go hang out with the guys at that stupid garage.
Obviously, that binary is something that isn't really real, but for the cis-het system which the writers for this episode, and from which Sabrina is reflecting, would definitely like everyone to believe that it is real, and so for simplification's sake here, something becomes real when enough people believe in it and write it to be that way. That's kind of how a lot of society works. Now, we have the premise of why Sabrina may want to do what she does. The thing to learn at this point is what the moral of the story is going to be. What lesson is going to be discovered so that the audience gets a better handle on connecting with the other gender from it? Johnny Bravo went with how women are actually smart. Boy Meets World went with the idea of women dealing with bullshit from guys in the dating world.
Why is everybody staring? What are they looking at?
Well, Sean, I don't want you to take this the wrong way.
Fairly Odd Parents went with the fact that women are humans, with complex internal lives and hobbies that break with expected stereotypes. These all wanted to say something for their teen audience to learn from. Well, before we can get to that, we get the very corny-ass intro, a real sign of the kind of show that this is, i.e. one that is perhaps designed for a different time period and also age range, though back when this aired, I would have been in the prime group that they were aiming to target, so really all I need to do is reach back and tap into younger me to get in the mindset. Oh god, it was a bad idea. Let's just judge this episode from my now position and analyse it for how it reflects on modern sensibilities and interpretations. The girls decide to head down to the garage because the diner was dead. The diner being dead because all the guys they hang out with ditched them to go to the garage. So you could sort of see the catch-22 that the women are kind of caught in there a little bit.
Slicer was dead, so we thought we'd hang here.
Free country.
And the two groups quickly find themselves in a position of having no shared passion for this area of expertise. The girls offering some statements that seem to be poorly received by the dudes because they don't mean much to them, and the guys offering very little for the women to get a grip on conversation-wise, pushing the women to leave and commit to never coming back and engaging with this masculine hobby ever again.
I'll see you.
Let's never do that again.
I am sure there is some grander commentary here on gender roles and how people clinging to them leads to situations where people are forced further into them by the insistent lack of receptiveness from those within the gender roles who try to maintain those stereotypes. But any thought about that for me gets swiftly cut off by Sabrina deciding to take her questions about what guys get up to and think about to her black cat familiar.
And since many people are allergic to...
No! Yep. Rather than, I don't know, ask a human dude, she instead decides that the easiest solution is to present that question to a male cat and hope, I suppose, that the cross-species differences are not as broad as the in-species gender differences. That's an even weirder commentary when you think about it. Like, guys from completely different animal kingdoms have more of a shared mentality than humans do with each other.
Boys or boy cats?
Is there a difference?
Not really.
Sam the cat tells us that there is no difference between boys and boy cats, affirming what I just theorised there about the sentiments of the show, and then continues to talk in the most horrifyingly robotic jerky movements I've ever seen in my life.
Cats might be a tad more political. Sabrina, when the women folk aren't around, men can relax.
There is some uncanny valley shit going on here. Regardless, we, alongside Sabrina, learn that when girls aren't around, the boys finally get to chill and talk about the big stuff. The big stuff that Sam won't tell Sabrina about because she's a woman.
That's for me to know, and for you to stay up nights boo-hooing because you'll never find out.
Yeah, really fucking helpful shit, and not at all just some built-in misogyny for the cat in this show. Sabrina then decides to turn instead to her centuries-old witch aunts for their advice, hoping that maybe they can be a little bit more useful in using their vast amount of experience to give her some kind of insight onto what the fuck do dudes do in their spare time. With both cracking some jokes about how difficult finding out what the mystery of men is. And then one of them suggests that maybe Sabrina should use a boy spell to become a boy.
Unless you could try to turn yourself into a boy spell. You're kidding, we can do that?
We discover in this scene too that one of the aunts apparently got lost as a man for 50 years. because she refused to ask for directions when transformed, and so I guess got stuck as a dude that whole time, if I'm interpreting this correctly.
The last time she tried a boy spell, she got lost for 50 years because she refused to ask for directions.
I'm not really sure on the logistics of that fact, and I also have no idea what that would mentally do to you, except for, of course, the fact that I'm trans and I know what dysphoria is, and I can refer back to how trans people deal with it, and how we know that cis people can also face dysphoria if forced into a gender that they do not align with. So yeah, it actually would be pretty horrifying, and it's not too surprising here that one of the aunts wants nothing to do with a gender swap spell, seeing as the last time that she did it, she effectively got 5 decades worth of being a closeted trans person for her troubles.
No, absolutely not. No boy spells, got it?
Kinda feel like we should be focusing way more on that story, but it's just a funny tidbit to throw down before everyone has a little laugh, and then Sabrina and the pro-doing the gender swap aunt go off to do some magic and turn her into a boy by making a potion that's literally a can of boy brew. We also get a comment here that if Sabrina does transform her gender, she won't have different boy thoughts. She will still just have her thoughts, but look and be as if she had been born a dude instead.
Oh, well, you mostly have your own thoughts. You just look like the guy you would have been if one of your chromosomes lost a leg.
Another interesting moment that feels as if it's supportive of the idea that a lot of this gender stereotype and gender presentation is outwardly enforced and constructed rather than internally built in from the start. A good thing to sort of work towards because it breaks down the essentialism which cages both men and women and frankly everybody. It cages everybody into specific stereotypes. Or maybe this is just a side comment by the show that they're not going to bother really diving into and will in fact immediately invalidate. We'll have to see. Sabrina burps, gets told that means it's working, and then we get the magical transformation scene that I'm sure a bunch of trans men must have seen back when they were kids and thought, well, hang on a second.
I don't feel any.
Oh boy. Different.
What's happening here? As Sabrina gets the boy band makeover. And with that, she's now a guy. On the outside at least, internal gender is a hell of a lot more complex, and in this particular case, she is still her, just kind of wearing a convincing physical costume, so one could actually argue that in such a case, we're dealing with a woman trapped in a man's body. Or not trapped, she drank a thing to get into this body because she wants to be in the body for a brief period of time. Sabrina then takes us through what feels different here. She still feels like herself, but suddenly she has a lot more masculine connections to the world. Specifically in that she knows that a sports channel is on the TV right now.
I still feel like me, but for some reason I also sense the Sports Center's on.
Yeah, that's what being a man is about. Sure. We then get told the magical limitations of this boy brew. Namely, that it only lasts for 2 hours when you drink it, which does feel a bit cruel and once more raises into question exactly what the fuck happened with that other aunt who got gender swapped and lost for 50 years? Was she like knocking back these things like nobody's business the whole time? Or did the aunts use a more potent form of gender swap for that particular transformation? I just think we need to know this information for the trans people in the back, because 2 hours doesn't feel like long enough to get the gender you want, while 50 years feels like a pretty sweet deal. On top of the knowing sports thing, Sabrina now also knows about chronographs, apparently, which makes me feel like, despite the claim that this drink doesn't change who you are or how you think, it does for some reason lean into the idea that women have no idea about sports and technology, and getting swapped to a guy gives them that ability. It's kinda just massively sexist when you think about it for 2 seconds. Like, really, really bad.
Hey, cool chronograph. Hey, I know what a chronograph is.
Not the lessons I want kids to be learning from either gender, honestly. And to add to the negativity here, Sabrina immediately gets taught a lesson about toxic masculinity by her cat. Jesus Christ, what a sentence. As Sam stops her from spraying perfume on herself, because doing so is absolutely going to lead to her getting her ass kicked by the other dudes.
Don't squirt that perfume unless you want to be a boy who gets beaten up.
For presumably being too effeminate. He then tells her that she needs to start thinking like a dude if she wants to pass, and that also she needs to figure out what name she wants to go with. Now, this cuts to our next scene, and in this scene we see an advantage of the boy brew being such a temporary transformation. Namely that Sabrina is able to go around as her regular self before drinking it, and becoming a dude for a set period. Not being forced into one way or another like other magical gender swaps have gone with in the past. This alleviates one of my talking points and criticisms of them, namely that it is bizarre to have a cis character being forced into a foreign body and then just not really having any problems with that and any dysphoria from it, because in this case, Sabrina can just choose to not be a guy anymore if she doesn't want to.
Well, we know what I think! Who cares what you think? You're a girl now!
Sabrina then meets her girlfriend outside after turning into a dude, and comes up with her boy name on the fly, because I suppose she didn't think any further about it after the cat literally asked her to come up with one. Something which shows a real lack of forethought and planning on Sabrina's part. Anyways, this is Jack.
Right, the name's Jack.
And for the rest of this video, I will be referring to her as Jack when we're in boy mode, and Sabrina when we're in girl mode, just to ease up any confusions. With all that resolved, Jack heads on over to the garage to ask the dudes need any help, as Jack has to spend time with the guys to try and answer that burning question of what do dudes get up to when the women aren't around. Immediately, Jack gets introduced to a whole new world. That world being one of male bonding, as they tell him... him? Let's go with him for Jack. They shove him straight into the fire of getting him to help work on the car with them.
Don't stand there, Sprasky. Give Kinkle a hand. I think he got his wrench stuck in his purse strap.
The respect from dudes for other dudes that they have never met before around mechanical stuff is apparently quite high, and really puts into perspective that sexism from earlier on when they pushed the women away from this world when those women tried to show an interest in it. We also get a bit of mockery of one of the guys that picks on women through its impression. We get a bit of dudes punching each other and pushing on their shoulders for no fucking reason at all other than, I guess, this being the only safe way to engage in physical contact with your bros without getting called gay. And then Jack suggests that the guy should check the alternator. The exact thing that he had literally suggested as a girl previously and been ignored over.
Hey, any of you clowns check the alternator?
Good idea.
Only for now to have it instantly lead to all the guys getting right on that and congratulating him for such a good idea.
Got our alternator replaced. Maybe it's the alternator.
No.
Okay, maybe the sexism is the point of the show now. Maybe sexism is what we're going to talk about. Well, I mean, not the basic, generic sexism they've already previously used and incorporated, but the more general aggressive sexism clearly laid out here of how women are treated by dudes as inferior/stupid when it comes to certain things. You know, that's a pretty good lesson to have learned or illustrated. To add to this point, on the adult side of the narrative fence, we see one of Sabrina's aunts having to use the boy brew to transform into a... I don't want to say clearly gay biker, but look at that collar.
Name's Sonny. I ride with the Marbleheads out of Marblehead.
Who pretends to be her own boyfriend so that a guy who is sleazing on her will leave her alone. Because he refuses to take her nose as, you know, lack of consent and lack of interest, only being actually shut down when there is a man involved telling him that she's not interested.
I am terribly sorry. Misunderstanding.
Last time we went out, I pepper sprayed him.
Jesus Christ, that's an upsetting thing to be shoved into such a casually comedic moment. Like, That's a dire and dark look at the state of women's bodies and lives in the eyes of men, crammed into a kids show with a laugh track played over it. Jack is talking to the guys about a sports dude and accidentally lets slip how he finds the guy attractive, only to have it saved by making a little homophobic joke and letting the conversation go in a direction that points out the man's sporting achievements rather than perceived hotness.
Yeah. What'd you think I meant, his butt?
Then the guys start doing a burping competition, because of course they fucking do. We've already ticked every goddamn box that are stereotypes. Why not this one? Remember, passing gas is a masculine thing, and women, I guess, don't have bodily functions. It's another classic bit of sexism. Masculine gas. Gasculine. Was thinking that the whole time. Jack uses a bit of magic to do the biggest burp, and that's enough to convince the guys how cool he is and invite him to come hang out with them later that night. Dude's really been that simple to impress, I guess. Unfortunately though, this conversation then leads to something that upsets Sabrina specifically.
I might be doing something with Valerie.
Namely, that she discovers that her ex Harvey Crinkle is looking to date other people. That other person being one of her friends, Val. Back home though, Sabrina's cat comes up with a plan for her. That plan being that she should ask Valerie out on a date herself. Not as herself though, because girls can't ask other girls out on dates, am I right? That's crazy talk. Women loving women, who ever heard of that? But Sabrina can ask Valerie out as Jack, and so therefore steal the girl that her ex-partner is interested in from him.
I'm not asking a girl out on a date.
Not you, Jack.
It's a very roundabout way to get to a queer place, but I do have to say, it's all giving some very strange major queer vibes, just with, literal gay magic. Sabrina asks Valerie out on a date as Jack, using her smooth moves to get the job done, and it's apparently just that simple. Valerie barely even knows the guy and said yes so fast. It is, when you think about it, kind of weird to fake date your best friend, and we see some of that homophobia rear its ugly head again, as Sabrina feels grossed out by the idea that she has a date with a girl.
No. Oh, I have a date with a girl.
I guess it's nice to see that there is bigoted shit on both the gay and lesbian side on this episode, although nice maybe isn't the right word to use there. Bad? Yeah, bad. Anyway, after a little bit of a dressing up montage and comment on the state of bras and their comfortability, Jack makes it to the date with Val. Pretty quickly, Jack learns why Val was so quick to jump on that date offer. It's because she never gets them, and it's also kind of clear why she doesn't, because the first topic that she has gone to when hanging out with this new guy is to discuss the fact that she never goes on dates, and if she does go on a date, then she doesn't get second dates.
I mean, I never get asked out. Never. Listen to yourself. This is not what a guy wants to hear.
Which is the kind of confidence in sharing your own personal lack of confidence that I think might scare a few people away. I'm just here to talk about the fact that we are watching a girl who hates going on dates with a girl, turning into a boy to go on a date with a girl to stop a boy from going on a date with that girl, and to figure out whether that's a trans thing or speak to some kind of trans experience at all.
If anybody else asked you out for this weekend.
Well, you're not a very good listener, are you?
It doesn't not speak to an experience of gender that at least breaks some kind of binary boundaries. I can say that much confidently. But oh no, a wrench comes into Jack's plan as that Harvey guy walks into the diner they are hanging at and comes over to see both of them, potentially intent on asking Val out on a date. I'm not sure if asking someone out on a date during a date is a good play.
Hey, Val. Dude.
Jack, however, pulls Harvey aside and tells him that he is going out with Val, and then drops a bunch of sexist shit about women to, I guess, make sure Harvey knows that Jack is a guy.
But don't tell Val that. I mean, you know how they are when they get comfortable.
Right.
Harvey takes it all pretty well and then walks away. So I guess success for Sabrina / Jack's really shitty interfering plan here. Back on the adult side of things, the guy who was after one of the aunts decides to not actually let the fact that she is married/taken stop him in his incessant demand for her to go out with him. Something which is really, really fucking creepy and not okay to be normalized like this show is doing.
Ring on Hilda's finger, therefore I must conclude that it is open season.
And so this inevitably leads to a fight between the creepy guy and the gender-swapped aunt, a fight that only gets broken up by the other aunt, who presumably recognises the gender-swapped one because she has probably seen this before. I have to assume that they have gender-swapped a few times in the hundreds of years they've been alive and casting magic. I mean, she literally says this.
Why is it every time you're a boy you have to start a fight?
So I guess, yeah, they are gender-swapping an awful lot, which makes a bunch of sense to me, but it's nice to see cis people out here confirming the idea within their creative worlds that if they could swap gender for a period, they would do it. Just to see. Back on the kid stuff, Val gets asked out by the Harvey guy, and she agrees to go out with him, because I guess Harvey absolutely doesn't give a fuck about trying to date someone else that he's been explicitly told is seeing a guy he knows. And Val also, I guess, doesn't see it as that serious. I mean, here's the thing. None of this is obviously that important, and this whole Jack thing is just a facsimile creation of Sabrina in a mask form, but there is some weird interactions there. Sabrina complains some more to her cat, a source of advice who has so far been pretty fucking appalling, which makes sense. I love my cat, but I would never go to Merlin to help with building a sound relationship or processing my emotions. And his new plan for Jack involves Jack interrupting the date between Val and Harvey to mark his territory.
Go to the slicery and mark your territory. That may be the cat talking, but it works either way.
Yeah, that's bad. That's bad fucking advice. But, of course, she decides to follow through on it. And so Jack goes to the diner to creep on his ex and the person that he is supposedly dating. If any of this helped any of y'all come out, then I'm grateful that it did that. Because it's kinda bad TV, kinda bad comedy, kinda bad drama, and kinda bad moral lessons all round. Jack, however, views this as an opportunity to spy on the people having a date some more, and just kind of pawn off this girl, who I have to assume is a recurring mean girl, because otherwise I've got no idea what she's doing here.
You short guys should wear a sign.
And then he uses magic to let himself hear the conversation by turning the salt shakers into transmitters. Yeah, not a super smart idea, because looking like this makes you look pretty crazy.
Never. I mean, there was one time when a guy who worked in my...
Back on the adult side, the gender-swapped aunt has gender-swapped back, gets told that turning into a boy is always a bad idea, and then decides that she actually kinda likes the stalker dude who's been persistent, and ignores the word no now, teaching boys the important lesson that you should ignore what a woman says and keep going, because eventually that hard work will wear them down and convince them that you are worth seeing.
That's okay. I'm kind of starting to like him.
Yeah, what a fucking great lesson to learn, huh? What a fantastic bit of social engineering to shove into your kids' show. That's exactly what we need if we want to turn the kids in the audience into maladjusted sexual harassers who are effectively Andrew Tate. I heard from a lot of people that this was a fun show for them. And don't get me wrong, there are some fun characters, and it has a little bit of campiness to it, like almost everything magical, but beneath all of that is a real shit show of lazy, bigoted writing that seems to hate women in a way that's kinda wild because the main characters are predominantly women. Jack, on the other end, is dealing with processing what he is seeing still, and storms off to the bathrooms when they hold hands, almost walking into the woman's pizza bathroom before remembering that he currently is occupying his boy's body and going to the men's pizza bathroom instead. He has a moment with himself in the mirror, gives himself a little bit of toxic masculinity advice, before Harvey walks into the bathroom too, and these guys finally get to have a proper talk. The talk leading Jack to realise that Harvey wasn't asking Val out on a date, he was actually asking Val about Sabrina and how he still feels about her. So this whole debacle was a complete waste of time that merely existed to let them shove the actress for Sabrina into drag for another 10 minutes, and also not bother exploring more interesting gender stuff, I guess. The episode ends with Harvey noticing that Jack has leaking mascara, because I guess the boys' brew completely changes not just your body, but your clothes and your makeup too. And then Harvey tells Jack how he has no problem with a dude wearing mascara, but that the other guys might have a bit of an issue.
Little word of warning, Jack, your mascara's running. Personally, I don't have a problem with it, but the guys will be all over you.
Because the implicit threat of violence/aggression in the face of gender-breaking decisions is a classic one for the upholding of the binary, and you might be saying, well, at least Harvey is cool with it. But is he really? If he was actually cool with it, wouldn't he fight to let Jack wear mascara because he would see that people attacking Jack for what he wants to do is wrong? Think about it. Regardless, what this really is the boy potion wearing off, and Jack turning back into Sabrina. Here in the boys' bathroom, in front of her ex. Not the ideal place to transform from a guy into a girl, to be fair. However, Sabrina gets out of there and runs over to the girls' bathroom, where we get this half and half shot of her being Jack and Sabrina, which I'm sure must have spoken to someone in some way, even if that person was only Dean from the show Community.
I think I went too far with this one.
And that's pretty much it. The rest of the episode is just the resolution of the teen drama crap that I never really gave a fuck about in the first place, and that feels inconsequential to either the gender swap or the trans connotations of it. I mean, we get one final scene where Sabrina says that the mystery of men is that there are no mysteries to them, and then we get to see the other aunt come out gender swapped as well, because I guess we wanted to see all of the witches do a gender swap at least once in this episode.
Am I right, lady?
Dude.
Just call me Buzz.
Now that we're done, do you feel that? That notion, deep down in your soul, the same thing that I think I'm also kinda connecting with? Yeah, that's right. The idea that this gender episode fucking sucked. It didn't really do anything right with the gender play that was going on. It didn't bother trying to use it to build a grander narrative or incorporate some kind of interesting lesson or explore an engaging notion about the way that gender has been used as a cage for determining what people think and how people feel. Instead, it kind of just used the gender swap to effectively enshrine those very stereotypes as being consistent even for those who have never had any experience of life as that gender. All the masked versions of the witches in this episode transform into hyperbolic performed masculinity in a way that effectively denotes that very act as something essential to the male experience.
Like you! There is more to love than book learning!
And rather than have the gender swap go in the direction of letting Sabrina figure out male life as Jack, the show instead just used it to effectively further the teenage drama that was going on, and to serve as a method by which Sabrina can try to stay in control over her ex-partner. A choice that feels like it's kinda wasting the opportunity afforded to you by a gender swap episode. Also, they brought up sexism a bunch but never once bothered trying to debunk it at all. Other shows, like I mentioned, made that a cornerstone of the narrative. Used the gender swap to express something about how the genders connect and contrast. Shows like Fairly Odd Parents, Boy Meets World, Johnny Bravo, all of them had some trite elements for sure, but they also put in the effort to explore themes of gender further. Sabrina the Teenage Witch just kind of falls into generic lazy writing, with no real intention of getting deep at all.
I learned that the mystery of men is there is no mystery. If you wonder what they're thinking, it's whatever they're eating.
At the end of the day, while all this can be a complete disaster, I would be remiss to not at least admit the fact that the quality doesn't really matter a huge amount when it comes to the queer awakening part. At the end of the day, a trans person seeing this moment happen with Sabrina becoming Jack and exploring life as Jack, despite the politics of how they do that and the lackluster manner in which it really bothers to give any weight or effort to it, well, seeing that alone is still able to be a trigger for realizing some things internally about yourself. People who see that and connect with it in a way that makes them realize they wish they could do that, or that would happen to them, might not be giving them the full trans identity egg cracking at first, but it puts the chips in the shell for that person to eventually have that conversation with themselves. It's why I bother talking about gender swaps at all. They are a bit of trans history, if only because they have relevance to trans people and to our stories. The amount of people that come to me and tell me to look at a gender swap episode because they remember seeing it and it had an impact on them and their transition journey really does say how important these still are, even when badly done, for discussing the idea of trans representation on the screen. I think it's a bit that a lot of scholars or other video essayists kind of forget. They all sort of ignore the gender swap episodes, but I promise you, in the effort to cover the whole trans rep story, we will be doing our best to not ignore anything. I'm going to talk about every gender swap episode. You can't stop me. But also, on that note, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you liked what I said, or connected with it, or just felt like I was doing some sufficient time wasting. God, do I understand the need for a bit of time wasting here and there. If you're all gas, no brakes, eventually you break down. If you did like what I do, then a great way to show that and a great way to let me keep doing whatever I want to do with this channel is by going to my Patreon and subscribing there, or going to my Ko-Fi and funding this channel. The names of those in the $5 and up category should be on the screen right now, and I really appreciate everyone on there for the continued efforts to keep what I am doing running. YouTube ad revenue is always all over the place, and for sponsorships, I find I'm kinda lucky if I get one every 3 to 4 months, both of which doesn't really help pay the bills all that well. So the money from people who support the channel directly is great, and goes towards my rent, my power, my internet, my food, and of course, my cat, who had a very expensive trip to the vet recently for me to discover that he is anxious and presents that anxiety by having bladder problems. God, he really is just like me though. But yeah, it helps to allow me to live my life and focus on the channel primarily, which means I get to keep making these videos and keep making content, which I love doing and would like to keep doing until I finally make that big trans rep video and then get to hopefully pivot to something else. Oh no. Don't know what right now, but if you got any ideas for how I keep this channel alive after the trans representation, please sound off in the comments or in my business emails. I'd love to know. Regardless though, a huge thanks to everyone who supports the channel, and also thanks to all of you who watch the video all the way through. That is very meaningful too. And if you want to go and check out my other videos, that would be fantastic. No. My advice is if you want bummers, click on the transphobia playlist. If you want happy, click on the trans episode of playlist. And if you want super long videos, watch the Harry Potter or Twilight or Riverdale thing. Anyways, thank you once more, and hope that you all have a great day.